So a couple of the coaches couldn't make any of the time, so we just thought we would video it and then post it and have it on file for them. And we've done a couple of these, and they've actually gone in that time range of a couple hours, so we'll try to get through it fairly quickly, and especially it'll just depend on how many questions there are. So the main reason we're doing this is that as we've tried to increase the supports for all of our programming, one of the things that stood out obviously over the last few years since Rolly came in and we changed our support structure a little bit was the lack of communication with our part-time coaches. And so that is something that we want to, hopefully you've noticed an improvement in that area over the last couple of years. And doing these meetings at this point, and then our individual meetings were something that we thought would be beneficial for all of you, and I think they've been well received the last couple that we've done. So that's really the rationale for doing it. We have monthly coaches meetings with our full-time coaches, and I know I lead those ones, so I'm cognizant that it would make sense to open them up to all of our part-time coaches as well. So we're going to do that on ones that make sense. Like sometimes there's content that it's more things that we're doing because their roles and it just wouldn't make sense to have everyone, but there'll be some where we might have some PD in it or some discussions that would make sense to all of us. They're usually in the middle of the day, and I'm sure some of you can't get there, but we would open it up to everyone and anyone that can make it great, because there's nothing secretive in it. It's just the way we started the meetings, and I think we're now ready to kind of grow them to whoever can attend. Oh yeah, let's go, yeah. So this is just something that we've put up because a lot of us have started to put this in some of our documents that we give to recruits or our communication with our alumni. This was all of the full-time staff from the department worked on this, probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and we built it through to this. So it's on the website, the mission, vision, values, the same as lots of other companies. So we encourage you, if you want to put that in some of your recruiting documents, you can. And why don't you skip through, I think, 2 of them. Yeah, that's good. And then, so we're actually going to, I've had unexpectedly a player we've been talking to told me yesterday that he's actually going to come on his own with his mom today for a visit, and from BC, and they want to meet at noon, so I kind of pushed them to 12:30. So we're gonna go right through to the budget stuff, because that's the main one that I'm going to talk on. So we're going to jump a little bit out of order, and yeah, so we'll go to budget and then we'll end up going back to the alumni development. Okay, so I'm going to go through this because this was again the main topic that I've been talking on, and so kind of get your financial brains on, and I'll review this. Hopefully some of the stuff you're familiar with, and that's good. So you hear it and you go, yeah, I already know all this. So that means you're understanding how we work, but hopefully there's also an opportunity to clear up any questions you have. So in our eyes, the money you have access to is broken down into 3 areas. We have our operating, which is the money that we, the department, give you to run your programs. And there's all the things listed under there that I'll go through. We have the team generated, which is you fundraising, and I like to say that like different sports have different cultures on how you're going to raise some money. So for us in men's hockey, running camps make sense because hockey camps for kids are a popular thing in Canada. So the football gala, which is something the football team does, like I don't see running a gala for hockey. I haven't heard of programs doing that, but that's a culture that's in football. So what you have in what this looks like, the way they get the money is different on your team. That also includes your player fees, which most of you are doing. I don't know if all of you, actually I don't think all of you are right now, but that's something that we can also discuss. So really it's camps, any sort of fundraiser that you're going to come up with, run through us, and then your player fees. And then the alumni donations will be really people or companies or someone that donates money to your program, whether that's alumni or whether that's parents. Even though we say alumni accounts, it can come from anyone who donates to your program. The things that we want to cover, we being we're trying to restructure our budget because the budget was a disaster. Okay, like 4 years ago, it was an absolute mess. now it's way, way, way better, but it's not fixed, is we want to cover your equipment costs. We want to cover your league travel. So if you're in a sport that has a league, we'll want to cover those expenses. We want to cover your playoffs. So if your sport, I'm just thinking of yours, doesn't have a league but has an OUA championship like golf's, and then we would cover the OUA championship expenses. But for the league, we're covering all the league costs for everyone. The salaries, we want to cover that. So that's the money you're making. I'll jump to that and give 2 minutes on that. So we acknowledge that the money you are getting and your staff are getting, and the money that our part-time coaches that have full-time coaches, so men's hockey, that our part-time assistants are getting is awful. We understand that it probably hasn't changed. We don't know when it changed last. So if it was $1,000 as the head coach of whatever team, it might have been $1,000 for 10 years. We actually have put a lot of work into it with human resources, trying to build a model with job descriptions to get where we can increase the funding. We actually put a proposal into the student services, which is where we get the majority of our funding, to try to get some more money. We weren't successful in this ask of getting it, but I think we've done enough work that we just need to build on it a bit and ask for some more again next year. I don't see anyone who was getting 1,000 all of a sudden getting 25. Okay, that's not what we're expecting, but it's to try to build in some incremental raises to, like, I know none of you are doing it for the money, but we also understand a bit more money shows appreciation, and times have changed, and so we are trying to make that change. I'd be happy to talk to any of you kind of more offline on it, but do know it's a priority for us. We have done an ask. Again, we weren't successful this one, but I'm hoping we're successful next time, and that would change some of the funding that happens with all of our part-time coaches. Therapy in season is something that you wouldn't have to pay for. The strength and conditioning we did not have a strength and conditioning coach 3 years ago. So not only was Hoffer new to us, Hoffer was a new job. So it takes time to go from 0 to 32 teams, what we say, and 600 athletes. And we're quickly moving in that direction where we can provide a minimum of S&C for all of our programs. Some of it might just be writing the content or the curriculum and having a day where your athletes are shown what the exercises look like, then they go away. Some of them, our tier 1 teams, for example, have training sessions where someone's there, and we're starting to bring that through to our tier 2 and tier 3 programs under a leadership program that Hoffer's going to led through with the health sciences faculty, largely the kin department, with getting some students that want to be strength and conditioning coaches. So that area is growing. Our academic supports that we have would be stuff that we would cover. So, and this is something that we need you to help share this information with your athletes. We had a meeting the other day with a couple of athletes from one of the teams. Not one of your teams, but one of our teams they've been here for 4 years. They had no idea that we pay for tutors. So to me, that would be, Chris will probably talk a little bit more on it later, that the communication trail we have to solve with you. Are you the ones? Are you going to designate a captain that's going to be the leader of communicating? But we need to find ways to improve the communication. But we have money to support the academic needs of our athletes, all of our athletes, and then AFAs, which again is something that we put it there, but we probably could have put it in all of them, because that's really how it's shared. A lot of you are getting some AFA money, especially our female athletes, but I can tell you from men's hockey, like, we raise over half of our AFAs come from donations. I can tell you we have a couple tier 1 teams that they're almost fully funded from donations, where they're not accessing any departmental money. So even if we know you are part-time coaches, so you would have less time, so we wouldn't, if we're raising 40 grand, we're not expecting you to raise 40 grand in a part-time role, but we'd also you'd have to know that's a part of it. You need to raise some money and talk to your alumni about that and do some promotions of it, because that's the expectation on all of our coaches. And then largely the team generated would be for exhibition experiences, food and apparel, and same as alumni. This breakdown is the same for all of our teams. Okay, so men's hockey I know the most. This is the men's hockey breakdown. We are raising money for exhibition, meals, and apparel. There's no one on our team gets free apparel. There is not, well, we're starting to get into the world of a little bit of meal money, but if we get it at tier 1, you're going to get it as well. The meal money has not existed for, I don't know, Marsh, probably 7 or 8 years. We used to have meal money when I started, probably been, I think it's been longer. Yeah, so it's been a while, and we have that as a priority as well, along with the salaries or funding for our staff. But apparel, like everyone's paying for their apparel. Like football's player fee is the biggest of all of our teams, and to help cover costs that they have, and just so you're aware that it's not everyone. I think there's a perception from some of our athletes that, you know, our basketball programs are getting all this and we get none of that. They maybe have more opportunity because they have a full-time coach to generate funds, but they're not getting funded really differently when it comes to the breakdown of how things that we look after. So what are some questions that maybe you four have on how that works, or your money, or any of that stuff? We're good? Do you like you four have been here a while, so I mean, you're probably understanding how it works, so it's all good. The one difference in this account is this account, the money that goes in can carry over year to year, so over the fiscal, where these two accounts basically, I won't get into all the ins and outs, but as of today, if it's not spent by the end of the year, you lose it. Okay, so as an example, if you have a really good, really successful fundraising campaign in a year, its fiscal is May 1 to April 30th. If you have $3,000 sitting in your account yesterday, it's gone, because we're in a new fiscal starting today. Okay, so we understand that's a problem. There's only been a few programs that are in that situation, and we've tried to solve it, and we've increased and we're going to be increasing our communication with you to make sure that doesn't happen, so that you don't just lose it, that you know in advance, hey, you have some money there, let's spend it. Because our last thing we want to do is have our student athletes, we care about you as well, but our student athletes go out doing fundraising events, raising money, and then it just get eaten up in the department. That's not something that we want to do. So we are increasing our communication with you. The positive of that is you're going to know if you have some money. The negative of that is we're increasing our communication with you. So if your budget is over budget and you don't have money in it and you've overspent, then you're going to have the same expectation on you to come up with that money. In the past, I would say that transparency of where the budget is hasn't been good. I would say you will notice a total difference next year, because we've fixed it up with our tier 1s. We've started a little bit with our 2s and 3s. Next year will be a massive jump with our 2s and 3s, because our tier 1s have kind of been solved and they were the bigger problem. Now that they're close to being fixed, be honest with you, our 2s and 3s are the bigger problem. Like our 2s and 3s currently cost us about $50,000 additional overages this year amongst all our 2s and 3s. So next year that needs to get to zero, because Rolly's sick and tired of me coming up with reasons why we're there. Be honest with you, because I'm ultimately responsible for those budgets. So IU, when we sit in our meetings, I don't look good because I'm overseeing IU budget and we're $100,000 over, right? So we're trying to fix it. So part of that is to let people know what you have, what you work with, what you need, because it's pretty tough to manage a budget if you don't know what you're working with. And we know that's how the past has been. So we're not going to spend a lot of time saying how it was before. No, it is going to change. Okay. Was there more on the next one? Yeah, so one of the ways we're going to fix it is we're going to communicate with you monthly on where your account sits. So we're going to tell you exactly what you have before, and then monthly throughout it, we're going to give you an update of where your account is, so that you can see what's been spent. It will also help if something gets coded wrong and ends up in your account that is not your account, because you're getting a monthly update, we should be able to catch it. How in the world did this happen? You go down and find out it wasn't your receipt. Right? And you can also be tracking what your plans are for spending. So that part of the change is that we have the online finance system for the entire university has changed about a year ago. So that has led to a change everywhere. Even in our own departments, we're just really getting on top of it, which is then allowing us to go down and track it for everyone. So that's what's taken some time. It's really good. I need to learn it better. These two are getting pretty good at it, but still learning. We're all in this kind of a similar stage, so we're going to bring all of our coaches into this next year, and hopefully that will make a difference. For receipts, like Keep Originals, you're still giving your receipts largely to Lauren. We don't have an online system for you yet. That is something hopefully we can do where you can actually submit your receipts electronically, but we're not there yet. Reminder to keep, if you buy a meal or something, keep both receipts, the proof of what you bought and your proof of payment. So from finance, if I send down just one of them and send down a receipt for $550 for a team meal, they want to see what it was spent on, to basically to show there was no alcohol and what else it might have been spent on. So I need to show both, and if you don't have both, then you're not, may not get the money back. So it's important that you take them. The other thing that we are supporting from the department, which we I guess could have put in that operating one, is that there is some PD money that has been available. So I think I've sent that out to all the coaches over the last couple of years. If you're looking to do some certification or an assistant, or there's a clinic you want to go to, we'll help fund it. We've rarely funded all of it, and that would be the same, our full-time coaches to our part-time coaches. We funded portions. But we have come up, I don't think that I've had an ask in the last 2 years that we haven't at least done some sort of support for it. Exhibition was mentioned before. The way exhibition is going to work for your programs is that if we'll put a deadline on if you're planning on doing an exhibition next year. So for golf, that would just necessarily be, I would call exhibition going to a tournament or whatever you would go to. Then let us know. We'll take all of the asks, we'll take the money that we've allotted for our tier 2 and 3 exhibition, and we'll split it up. And so 1 year you might have access to more because not many people ask. The next year you might have access to less, but we will give you some money for those experiences. And then we also have money for video editing. So the last 2 years, I think we've paid in full any team that is buying video editing software for their program. I believe we've covered the cost in full. Is that right? We've done that. So if you have something that you want to use for your program, honestly, like there's stuff we could buy for football and hockey that are 6 figures. So we're not talking about that. Obviously, we're talking about, you know, the $1,000 or $500 or something that you want to use with your sport. Then come to us, and we have some money in a pot that we, again, if a whole bunch of people ask us next year, you might not get it fully covered. But based on our asks the last 2 years, we've been able to fully cover that for all of our programs. I think that was the end of the budget one. So then we may go back to KCB's, the development one. So this is just a slide that Chris Cates Bristol and Siri put together, and it was simply, he just asked, please remind all the coaches that we want to help them too. And so you have to remember, like, they're also looking after all of our teams, so their availability for all of us, to be honest with you. You may go, oh geez, I've already asked them for this, it takes so long. Just keep asking, and you can bring me in on the loop as well. It's the same as me with the men's hockey. There's things we want to get done that we're waiting on with them. But they can definitely help with things that are here. So alumni events, if you're doing something, let them know in advance. So they might be able to get one of those pop-up banners that makes it look a little bit better. They might be able to get you, they usually give little bags that have stuff in from the alumni office that you can give out as a prize. They may be able to get you a whole bunch of lanyards or pens or something like that. But if they know in advance, they could maybe get something there and just help coordinate it with you. There is an expectation to do regular newsletters, we're calling them, or emails or whatever, to your alumni group. And so I don't know where all of you are with that. Maria, do you have that happening right now?
Not regularly.
So that will, and Tyler, I think not regularly yet, not regular yet.
Okay,
so that's just knowing, and that's all good. Like we've just, I would say This year that just finished was the first year that we had our full-time coaches on the path we wanted them to. So their expectation is in-season weekly and then out-of-season monthly. And then there's obviously the odd exception. Maybe one time you do it twice in a week for something, or you give it 2 weeks, but that's the general rule that we're doing with them. And I don't think our support was ready for all of you yet, but that's coming where we're going to look for that. So that the email, like it's world of difference. Like it will lead to more donations. It will lead to better attendance. It will lead to lots of good things for your program. Just that regular communication. And it's not just an ask. Like it's not a, hey, we want money. It's an information, what's going on, keeping people updated. Then all of a sudden they're going to feel more interested in giving because they see what's going on. It's actually very few asks in it. It's more sharing and updates with information. And then a reminder that they also oversee the Adopt a Warrior. So if you want to run a campaign for Adopt a Warrior and want to help promote that, Chris and Siri would be the two to talk to. They run the AFA that you get from donations. So to get a named award, so if someone wanted to come in and designate an award that could only be given out to an athlete that's on our women's golf team, that Chris and Siri would be the ones that would help set that up. And so that's totally possible, though. If there's minimums that you have to hit and all that, they have all that information. And something just that I think you've probably all seen, I hope, is that if someone donates to your program, they've coordinated the thank you letters. So that should either make its way to your athletes through the IU Council or possibly through you, where either yourself or one of your athletes sign it, say thank you, and then give it back to them, and they mail it back to them. So that might have happened on your teams, and you might not even be aware of it because it might have went to your athletes at IU Council and they might have filled out themselves and given it back. But that is a program that they lead the communication on with that. Okay. Anything else that you can picture me speaking on now? So you want to just maybe look at the first slide after the MVV, and so contracts I talked on. You could do the rest of that. Maybe parking we'll just talk on. So what are your parking problems? So we're just wanted to talk through while we're in person, like what are some solutions? So a solution with parking, because we've had lots of talks with them, is not to come up with special passes for you or your assistant coaches that are here, from 6 to 8 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we just want those, and that's not a solution. Okay, it's, be honest with you, for the amount of money it saves us and the time that's put in and them having to educate all the people that check the passes, it's not worth our time. And so that's not something that we're doing. So your solutions would be to buy a pass, would be to buy day passes as you show up, which are I think $6 now, would be to buy those scratch tickets that work out to be about $5 a pass, that you could then just put a bunch in your glove compartment and scratch the date off. They're one-time use. You could park at Accelerator Center. I don't want this to go live. Parking would get mad at me. I'll turn around. So you could park at Skid Row. Skid Row. But so maybe, do you have questions on that? Like how do we, I don't know each of your situations, like what's the main problem, and maybe we can suggest the best way financially to solve it.
What does the parking pass cost?
A term, I don't know, it comes off of all of our pays automatically. I don't even know what it is.
I think it's around 150 for the term.
So you can do the math on how many times you or your staff are there. You could, if your budget has money, so if your fundraising budget has money, you could use that money or your alumni account and buy some scratch passes to give to you and your staff. So you go down and you buy 20 of them are $100. So there's 20 times for people on campus. And that you could do. We honestly, we don't want to get in the world where we're spending thousands of dollars on parking because we could buy passes for cheaper. We're not going to buy passes, us, the department. Our hope is that we can increase the amount of money that you're getting, and then if you choose to buy a pass. But we're not going to get into the world of buying passes for everyone. It just didn't make sense, and they took that away a few years ago. But you could use some of these funds to buy parking passes as long as your account is in good standing, if you will, in the surplus. What have you been all doing? So do you even come to campus very much?
Only for meetings like this.
I mean, right. And so don't come here just the odd one. And then what do you do?
Accelerator.
Okay. And what are you doing? And you're here early enough in the morning sometimes, probably before parking. Or would you?
Well, we go till 8:30, so we usually
They start when you're, okay. So, yeah. So Chris can probably go through the rest of this.
You want to do apparel, maybe?
Sure. So apparel, I don't know if you have questions. So Trevor leads that. I would hope that this year that just finished was the best year you've had for arrival times since probably any of you have been here. We changed the support we provided to Trevor for purchasing, the timing of it. It was a bit of a financial decision at our point to try to help solve it. I know if you didn't get your order in on the dates last year, then you wouldn't have got it. We are at the mercy of Nike, so there's going to be some things, unfortunately, that don't come on his time. But was yours better last year, or better, different?
We had issues.
Okay, with stuff that was being
Stuff that was discontinued, so stuff that didn't match the new stuff.
Right.
Old stuff, and then our uniforms didn't match each other.
so a little bit more like the Nike opposed to
Yeah.
the timing of stuff, because the biggest thing we wanted to eliminate was things showing up in December for a fall sport that's already done. So I think we fixed that. How about you guys? How did your?
Ours was better, but it wasn't like terrible. But we still didn't get our stuff on time. And one of our main pieces, which is our original paint, this is the Nike issue, which
Yeah.
is just, which we use every single day every practice. And I can still warm up the print on it started coming out, like the screening,
Right.
just like start disintegrating. So Trevor looked at it and stuff, but wasn't able to get a
Right.
great response. But and we did have a discontinued issue with one of the things, or like we ordered it and then they couldn't provide it.
So the Nike stuff, unfortunately, will probably never go away. And if we switch over and go with Adidas, it's going to be the same thing. Like those are the two main ones. So, but we're hoping that Trevor, the timing of stuff to at least have things here for the majority of our athletes has changed completely from 2 years ago. So that's just know that he's your guy. But if there's other stuff you want to talk to us about, we can bring it up now. But I know Trevor's in the middle of, last week he was doing lots of meetings and trying to get stuff going and order. So is there any questions on apparel? Okay, the one thing that we haven't made a decision on, and I don't know any of your situations on it, is that, but I do know generally across tier 1s and tier 2s and tier 3s, is that we have some teams that in our opinion are probably spending too much on their coaches. Okay, so Rolly and I have talked, I haven't really talked to you guys about it, just kind of offline, and we're just feeling that we should put a parameter on that, because ultimately that money, unless you as a coach are paying for it, is being paid for out of student money that they've raised or operating money that we've given, and we don't allow any of our coaches to do that past a portion. So our gut is like, if you were to spend a couple $100 on a coach to get some stuff, that's fine, but we don't think our coaches should be spending $500 to $700 on themselves each year. And if you have 4 coaches dropping $3,000 from student fundraising money, that's not something that we can sit in good faith in front of our student leadership and explain to them. Basically, we want to, so that, I have no idea your programs. I just talked to Trevor generally, and that was a comment that he made, is that he thinks we need to put some parameters on some programs. So if that happens to be you, just know something that might come down the line where we say, you know what, the max you can spend on a coach is this, just for the reasons I just explained, which I think is logical if we all listen to it, but we have to, I think, be aware of the perception of stuff that we're doing. So, okay. So. There you go.
Are you around after your producer?
Depends how long it's here for.
Just
So,
like
yeah.
just had questions about that concussion thing from that I sent you.
Oh, I saw you.
Okay, I'll find.
Yeah, I can. Well, I can definitely talk if I end up running out of thing. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, so we got a couple slides on therapy to run through with you guys. First of all, just to run through the staff, I've met most of you, but my name's Laura. I'm the head therapist. I have Chris, who works for me, and Jackie, who's currently on mat leave. We've just posted her job to hire her mat leave position. Got a bunch of applicants coming in, so I'll hopefully have that settled by June, I would think. Whoever her mat leave will be, I'll let everybody know. I primarily work with football, basketball, and volleyball. So Chris and Jackie / the new person kind of do everything else. Chris had given me his list of teams that he wants to work with this year. I couldn't tell you what they are right now. He kind of ran me through them the other day, and I just said sure. So we'll find that out soon. But the thinking behind that is that each team will have someone that's kind of responsible for their athletes. In the past, we've just kind of done like an open door, we'll treat whoever at whatever time, and then the communication kind of gets lost. So each of your teams will have one of us that's designated for you. Unfortunately, golf and curling don't have student trainers this year, just numbers wise, and also logistically, I'm not entirely sure it's needed. Yeah. It doesn't mean you don't have access to therapy though. So your athletes are obviously more than welcome to come in for therapy. We just don't have somebody there on site. I feel like rugby, for example, has a much bigger need for having people there for emergency first aid as opposed to curling and golf. Not that you can't get injured at either of your sports, but that's just kind of the way it's worked out in the past. So some of this stuff might not apply directly to you too. So that's our AT staff. We also have a part-time AT that works out of the PAC clinic that treats paid students. So all students have athletic therapy as part of their FEDS health plan, including your athletes, assuming they don't opt out of that, which they would have to fill out paperwork in order to do so. They're covered for 80% of each visit. So Mel, currently working out of the PAC clinic, is treating mostly regular students, but when varsity athletes are out of season, that's where they go. They go to the PAC clinic to see Mel. So I think the next slide has kind of the breakdown. We don't have to go to it yet, but no, sorry, I'm not there yet. I'll walk you through the breakdown of when therapy is in season for you guys. So we have 4 athletic therapists, then we have chiros that come here to the CIF clinic on Mondays in season. It's a first come, first serve. They're here from 12:30 to 1. If all the football coaches aren't there lining up, there's lots of time for our athletes to see the chiros, but usually football kind of zips in there. That's a free service, and massage therapy is also a free service that we offer on Mondays at the PAC 2021, so upstairs in that meeting room. And again, that's for varsity athletes. They can show up. The way massage works is it's a sign-up sheet, and you just sign up for your half-hour time slot between 3:30 and 6. You can show up at 3:30, sign up for 5:30, come back at 5:30 for your massage. And that is run through a massage school in Cambridge. So they're students trying to get their volunteer hours or their experience hours. And that changes every month or semester, I think, the kids that are in there doing massage. So that's available to varsity athletes. And then we have a sports med doctor that comes in. It says Tuesdays and Thursdays on there. I'm not sure if that's going to be what it looks like this fall. I'll talk to Dr. McQuaig and see what he wants to do. That's by appointment only, that has to run through us. So the athletes can't just book an appointment. It's got to be through myself or Chris or Mel or whoever the new person is. It's covered. They don't have to pay for that, but we just have to know that they're seeing them. Along those lines, we would prefer if all of the athletes kind of went through us to see a sports medicine doctor as opposed to going on their own to get an x-ray or to get an MRI. We actually have it fairly good here in Canada. It does take a little longer to get an MRI, but at least we're not paying for said MRI. If your athlete wants to go to Buffalo and pay $1,000 to get an MRI, go for it. But we can usually get it done with our sports med doc and his connections, usually within a couple weeks. We'll get an MRI ready. With the whole integrated health network now, it's kind of changed that timeline a little bit because family doctors are able to order MRIs now, which kind of is a pain in the butt. But Generally, we're faster than going out on your own. So we would prefer if everybody kind of stayed in-house because A, we have communication with that doctor, which we can then relay to you. If it goes outside, we don't necessarily know what's going on with your athlete. I can't find out when the MRI is or when the surgery date is if they're going out on their own. If it's through us, then I'm in communication with the surgeon and the sports med doc. So at least we can keep everybody in the loop. Unless someone's parent is a surgeon or runs an MRI machine, which we should know about, we try and keep it kind of through us. And then bracing, I do here in the clinic. So if we think someone's going to need an ankle brace or their ankle taped repeatedly, we'd rather put them in a brace. Doesn't apply to you guys because you guys can't wear braces. But that's also covered through their Feds health plan. So if somebody does need something, we can provide that and they'll get reimbursed for their money. Next. So these are all the med forms. This is a really boring part. Every summer I will send out an email to you guys, which hopefully gets relayed to your athletes. There's a lot of stuff for them to fill out. Marsh, I think, is still kind of working on trying to streamline that whole process so that we can all see all of the forms that need to be done. I have forms, Gilbert has forms. There's all sorts of stuff that they need to fill out. So we're trying to kind of condense that or make that easier for them to see. But from my component, I do have a lot of stuff that they need to do. So Presagia is our online injury tracker system that we use as ATs. And the student athletes can upload and create their own accounts. And then we just input their information when they come in for therapy. I like this system because it means I don't have to input 600 varsity athletes and set up their accounts. They can do it themselves. It's fairly user-friendly, although every year I have the problem where returning athletes will forget their password. And then I gotta troubleshoot that. But I can't send this out too early because I have a cap on the number of athletes I'm allowed to have in this system. And so I have to retire all of our 4th and 5th year players that are for sure not coming back before I can open it up to freshmen that are coming in. So the window for this is usually in July that I start to send this out. So if when you get that email from me, if you could pass that on to your team, we're more than happy to troubleshoot any issues that they have, but we just need that to get relayed to them so that they can start the process. So we're not all doing it on our intake day. That's chaotic enough with intake instead of having to sit there and fill out their med forms. I don't take paper copies because everything we've done now is online. So I want everything uploaded to Presagia from the athletes. There's a concussion statement that's on there. There's a CCS that Gilbert kind of runs, but we work together on that one that they all have to do every year. Part of that is a cannabis quiz that we've created. And then the concussion baseline testing. So every new athlete has to do the concussion test for the contact sports. So your teams won't necessarily have to do that. But the contact sports would. And then every other year, an athlete has to do it. So we get a fresh baseline. If they do sustain a concussion during their season, we have lots of resources available to help them through that. So we have a return to learn protocol now in place and a return to sport. So it's not just about getting them cleared for practice, it's about making sure they can go to their next class. So if they do get a concussion, the sooner we know about it, the sooner we can contact accessibility and get that process started to make sure that they're covered from an academic support side of things. So what we've had in the past is someone gets a concussion, doesn't really say anything about how bad their symptoms are, and then they have a midterm in 2 weeks, and the night before the midterm they're like, well, I really have all this headache, I can't study. But if I know about that 2 weeks ago, then I can start the process, accessibility knows about it, and then hopefully they can get either extra time or have someone write it for them while they speak the answers, whatever it is, whatever their symptom is that's slowing them down, accessibility can work with them. But we need to know about that as soon as possible so that we can actually get that process started. Once they do sustain a concussion, they'll see the doctor to get that diagnosed. We can provide VIFs, so profs need to see that VIF, that verification of illness, to know that they've actually talked to somebody about the concussion, that they're not just trying to get out of a midterm. With the concussion testing, we're going to try something new this year that's a really brief kind of mental health screen. It's a little questionnaire that's asking about like depression, anxiety, and something else. I can't remember, stress, I think. And once we get those answers, if anything is flagged, we have the ability to kind of pass that on to whether it's Dr. Tom in counseling services or Marsh or whoever we need to bring in the loop. Sometimes they're not comfortable to come to us directly and say, I need to talk about whatever, but if they can check a box on a questionnaire, maybe that's easier for them, and then that just kind of alerts us, and we can start whatever that process is to get them down the path to get help. So that's new this year. I'm not sure how that's gonna look. We're still kind of meeting about who's involved in that, but that's something we're gonna try. Anybody that's doing a walk-on, so not just the walk-on day, but if you're running anything in the off season, so if you're running a recruit camp, or you just have guys that you think are going to be part of your team in the fall, but you're not sure yet, and you're going to have them come out to a practice in the summer, they need to fill out the waiver and the questionnaire, which is on the athletics website. They can print that one off and fill it out because I don't have access for them on Presagio yet, but we just need to make sure that they don't have any health conditions that we don't know about, and then we send them out there and they get hurt and we don't know anything about them. So anybody that you're thinking of bringing in the summer, on the athletics website, and I think you guys are getting this anyway, but you should be able to just send them the waiver and the questionnaire, forward it on to me once you do that, and I'll just keep a paper copy of it all, and just so we have it. And then in the fall, if they're going to be on your team, then they'll have to do this in August or September. Is there one more? I think there's one more. So are you going to talk about roster sizes later? Maybe. So we do need to have a roster so that we know who is on your team, so that I can make sure that everybody has their paperwork filled out. One of the issues we've run into in the past is teams that have, for example, 45 people but only dress 12. Number 45 seems to get injured all the time and is constantly taking up space in therapy, when number 12, who we want to start this week, can't book in because number 45's been in for therapy all the time. So we're not saying you have to have your starting roster etched in stone, but just be aware that having excess number of bodies on your team puts a strain on our already small clinic and limited resources. So we do like to have a roster that there is no true red shirt in youth sports. That's a college thing in the States, but we can talk about that further. But just know that if you have an absurd number of people on your team and none of them at the very bottom are really going to see the field, they might not get the therapy that they think they require, because the people that are seeing the field might need the therapy a little bit more. Not saying they don't need therapy, but they might not get as much access. So if we can see where your thoughts are in terms of what your roster looks like, that helps us kind of allocate our time. So this is our kind of in-season, out-of-season access. So every team in season gets access to free therapy, and you'll get about 2 weeks post-season just to wrap up any kind of acute injuries, free therapy. And then beyond that, this is where Mel comes into play over at the PAC. So once we're fully out of your season, we'd send those athletes to go see Mel. And again, they're covered for 80%. If their parents have athletic therapy coverage on their own plans and the kids are still under 25, they could get reimbursed for the whole 100%. So this is kind of our breakdown, and we base this again on like the OUA and the U Sport model. So that's where that's kind of come from. Is that my last slide? Do I? Oh, I do. So this just kind of breaks down the coverage. So I think there's been, again, confusion in the past where athletes are thinking they don't get therapy out of their season. They do. It's just we have to, in our way, much like you guys have to generate money, we have to generate money too, and this is our way to do it. We've worked with feds over the years to get athletic therapy added to their plan for this exact purpose. So now athletic therapy is part of their plan. This is why, so that we can try and generate some money on our end as well. So we don't have AFAs and we don't make our student trainers pay to be student trainers. This is our way of kind of bringing some money back into the fold. And again, it's a pretty easy process. There's actually an app that they can download, and then they just like scan their receipt and upload it, and they get their money sent back to them. They do have to go to the health plan office the very first time, which is across from the SLC, across the pond in the new health services building is where the health plan office is. They just have to set up their account there in person once, and then they can get the app. They must get an access code or something, and then they can just scan receipts. It's a lot easier than in our world where we used to have to mail our receipts and wait for a check, and so it's a lot faster. So we've done our best to make it as easy and seamless as possible for the athletes, but there might be some glitches along the way. Does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff? Not so much. Sure. Yep. Oh yeah. Mel's still, just because Mel's at the PAC doesn't mean she's not part of our world. So she'll have access to what files we've done online. So we do all our treatments online, and then Mel has the same access. So she'll know that if someone in the end of those 2 weeks was seeing Chris, and then the 2 weeks are up, and then they go over to Mel, Mel can still see the same thing and do the same treatment that Chris did. It'll just be a different face doing the treatment. But yeah, we see her all the time. She actually has to treat up here in December and April anyway because of exams. PAC clinic's closed. We get booted out of there. So she's up here regularly. Sometimes we treat out of the PAC as well. Like I'm working with the court sports a lot, so I spent a lot of time this year over at the PAC. So there is, just because we're separated by a street, we're still in communication. For you two with your student trainers, we're going to have an online Google Sheet, which I think Chris might have done, or Jackie last year. Does that sound familiar? That just has an injury report on it. Does that sound like a thing we've done? That could apply to you too as well. That doesn't require student trainers to do that. So if your athletes are in for therapy, we on our sheet just have the name and the injury and the status. So football gets one daily, for example. My court sports get one a couple times a week. And I just highlight the names, green for full go, yellow for limited, and red for no go. And then you just have a quick look and be like, oh, there's 3 red names on my list. What do I have to do to change my practice? Again, we try and update as often as we can. We're gonna have the student trainers in on that mix this year so they can add things. If they see something at 6:30 in the morning, they can type it in so that when Chris or whoever is the new person comes in, they know what happened at practice in the morning. And then vice versa, when we treat someone during the day and you've got to practice in the evening, you can have a quick look at work and just say, okay, so-and-so came in, or so-and-so is injured but missed their therapy appointment today. It kind of works, yeah, always. So that is our plan for each team, to have this communication coach, trainer, athletic therapist, and everybody can kind of edit it. You guys can put little things like so-and-so did this at practice, look good. We can put limitations in terms of what they can and can't do. And that's just to avoid the problems in the past of us telling an athlete they're no go for practice, and then they go to you and say, oh no, they said I could go full out, and then they pull their hamstring and make it worse. So we're trying to eliminate all that issue. So that'll be sent out in the fall once you guys get started. Any other questions? Nope, good. Okay, your turn.
Very much. All right, thanks, Laura. All right, we'll go back to the department administration slide and talk about communication. I think as Brian mentioned right from the beginning, like there's a lot of great changes that's been has taken place so far with Rolly coming over. So obviously Brian's in a new role right now. Lauren is not only doing travel, but she oversees a lot of the student athlete success programs. Marshall, who's going to talk about his new role in a little bit, he's come on to the varsity arm of the department. So we're starting to really build our supports for the athletes and for our coaches. Having said that, we totally understand that we push out a ton of information to you guys as head coaches, and as Brian mentioned, we have an expectation that the information that needs to get filtered down to the student athletes is going to be done. But every year there's always an example, as Brian said, you talk to someone and someone didn't know about a program that we think that we just assume that everybody knew about it, but it doesn't. So we're also looking at different ways of communicating not only to you but to your athletes. So one example is we have email accounts for every single team. We've just spent a good portion of last term doing that, one of our co-op students. So we're now able to push out a team email to single teams, a bunch of teams, all the athletes together as one. So we think that we can effectively communicate better, not just to you guys, but to the student athletes. So because we have so much going on, there's so much that you guys have going on, look, we know that a lot of teams will have student leaders, their captains, take a role in whether it be coordinating travel with Lauren, doing fundraisers, communicating in some fashion with the department. Just let us know who they are going to be on an annual basis, and it'll just make our roles easier to communicate to you or to your captains. Coaches' contact informations and bios. So over the course of the summer, we're going to be in touch with all of you, and we're going to update all the information that's on the website. Get updated bios of yourself, perhaps some pictures. Dan will probably be in touch in that regard. And then if there's any changes to email and phone, like just don't remember, not only is your information on the Waterloo site, it's also on the OUA site, could be on the U Sport site, so just make sure that we have updated information so it's consistent across all the organizations. Marshall, you can talk a little bit on this one as well, but I can just kind of open it up by saying that one of the things that all the staff across the campus are expected to do a number of workshops in a number of different areas. And then as we've done this across our department, we felt that a number of our head coaches need to be certified in these particular areas as well. So just Marshall's going to kind of run through a few of the things that we're going to push out, and it's going to be an expectation of the head coach. And if you have part-time coaches that want to take advantage of these opportunities, that door is also open.
Thanks, Chris. I'll just give you a real quick second with this. So as Chris said, we all have to do this. I'm sure we've all done WMIS, right? somewhere. I know you've all done WMIS somewhere, someplace. We still have to do our WMIS, okay? We still have to do our violence in the workplace, employee safety orientation, and the accessibility training. That all has to be done on campus. Now, admittedly, for example, I put WMIS up there. The department or the university says it takes about 45 minutes to do WMIS. We all know we've been able to do WMIS less time than that, right? So it's an online thing. We're going to send you off this link. You're going to be able to access all this different training through your WATIM account. So your user ID and your password will take you into this account. Okay, all that stuff will be listed there for you to take. Check out that you've taken it. The final one, which is the supervisor safety orientation, you only need to do that if you are hiring students to run a camp. Okay, so if you're not running a camp or you're not supervising students, then you do not need to take that one. Okay, but I put it up there in case you are running a camp, and you do have students working under you, then you're gonna have to take that one. Okay, with this whole thing here, you also need to do a vulnerable sector check. So you go police services, go to whichever one is local to you, go in there, get the form, fill the form out, hand it back in. Once you have your vulnerable service check done, please email one of the three of us. We're going to create a file. So you take a picture of it, you can drop it off, whatever you like. We'll create the file and make sure you checklist. The same when you have some of this training done here, you know, take a screenshot, let us know. We can't access your WATIM account to see if you've done that training yet. But once you've completed that training, there is a piece on that WATIM account, your Workday thing, that shows you that you've completed that course. And we just need to see that that's all done. So yes, it takes time, guys. I admit that. And yes, it's a bit of a pain in the butt to do it, but it has to be done just to satisfy our employer that we're working in a proper manner. Having said that, if you start the violence in the workplace and you get halfway through it and your kid called you, to go run out there and take them to basketball or hockey or wherever it might be, when you reopen it, you'll go back to where you left off. Okay? It's not like you have to complete the entire course all in one sitting. You can pop in and out as you want. Okay? Yeah?
How often do you police check?
How often do you need to do this? Or
Go to the police check.
the police check?
Don't need the second.
Yeah, well,
2 years ago, like, go do it again.
if it's more than a year, yes, you have to do it again, yeah. Okay? We're hoping that we can just do one and then hopefully skip a couple of years because it's $20, right? It's $20. You know, and if you,
Go in and use that change.
yeah,
They will not give you change.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think they take credit or anything. They have $20.
yeah, the $20 bill right then and there. Yeah, I know, it's a pain in the butt. Been there, done that.
Nobody else takes that mistake.
And if anybody's going to work with youth groups, you know that you're going to have to get that done anyways, right? So that's the kind of thing the vulnerability check, we're going to get done this year, get all the head coaches done that, and then year by year, we'll be looking at. Nice thing is, these ones up here, once you've done them, you've done them. Then you don't have to renew them, okay? Unless they make WMIS, 2021, in which case we all have to redo it. The final thing that is going to need to be done is first aid. There is a first aid requirement that you have with your job, okay? If you have trainers with you, you guys will all be pretty much in the boat where you need emergency first aid. The usual one is standard first aid, that's that 2-day course. Emergency first aid is the 1-day course, okay? It's renewable every couple of years. We're working on getting some time set aside and make that available to you to take. But just so you know that will be one of the requirements that's going to be coming up. Any questions about that at all? No?
For coaches, the cost would be covered by the department for the first day as well.
Yeah.
The login, I don't have that or I've never heard that before.
Are you getting paid by the university at all? Do you get a yes, no, maybe?
As long as you have an employee ID, which all of you would have, because you would have been paid before, we'll be able to issue you a 1IM, but we just might have to do it through ISD if you don't have an existing one already. So just connect with me or Darren and
No.
we'll troubleshoot each one.
Yeah, we'll get you through that.
I was just gonna say, I don't have a student that
It will probably still be the same one, we just might have to update your password. So, yeah, we'll just be working with ISD, but I'm gonna figure that out.
Test your old one though, you never know. It might work.
I because you needed to like access an enter all,
Yes.
but I can't remember the password, so I'm gonna hack it.
You can just ask them to send it through again. They'll send you a new password. Yeah. Yeah, they're good about that.
Get you some Wi-Fi.
I think that's a flash sheet then. So yeah. Yep.
All right, OUA and U Sports Administration. So very similar to all the information that we push out as a department. You get probably inundated with lots of information from the OUA or U Sports. So we just want to just kind of reiterate some of the things that you're expected to do. So attend coaches meetings. I know the process has changed over the last year, so you may not have those in-person coaches meetings that were kind of mandatory in the past. It's kind of gone to every other year, and sports may change, but just know that it's an expectation for you to participate, whether it's in person or through a conference call. So the motions and voting, there's fines that are associated with if you don't vote for All-Stars, if you don't show up for one of those coaches meetings, and certainly behavior. That's something that they really cracked down on a couple years ago, like across the OUA. It was problematic. I think we've done a really good job in the last 2 years to kind of alleviate a lot of the issues that some sports were having. But just know if there's anyone that's kicked out of your games, there's an automatic fine. Voting for All-Stars. If there is an in-person, so the last point there, if you do have to go to an in-person coaches meeting, we'll cover the cost of the travel and potentially accommodation. So at this time, if we can go to the OUA site. I think this is where we did it last time. So just quickly showing you the OUA site. So just, I'm sure everyone in here knows, if you go to sports, Lauren, and so this is the way they've laid out, now they're calling them G1, G2, G3, just really have a good understanding of where your sport falls under each of those categories. And then if you go to any particular sport, and then if you go to more, your specific sport regulation is posted right there. Again, I would assume everyone's read it. It's not a bad idea to reread it on an annual basis. Because if you scroll through, if there's anything highlighted in yellow, that means it's updated within the year. So usually what happens after the OUA meetings in May, which are coming up, if there's any changes to your rules and regs, this will be updated in the summer.
Chris,
Yes.
just a question. It seems in the last couple of years it's been really wishy-washy as to when you can change rules and not change rules.
Yep.
And last year in golf, it was
Yep.
they made us come to the OUA Championships to have a meeting, and then they said, oh no, we're not having it. So is there a set time, like, that if we need to make something change that we can come to you with?
Yes. Yeah. If you have any questions, issues about your sport, regardless of timing, you come to Brian or myself, and we can certainly address it.
Are
So
the
what?
meetings always in May?
So the OUA, so the board, the OUA board, which is comprised of all the athletic directors and all the managers across all the institutions, they meet and they'll go through an agenda. So now what they've done in the last 2 years, like I said, there's been lots of change, especially at the OUA office. So they just felt there was a lot of administration going through all the sports and all the motions of every single sport annually was a lot of time. So what they've tried to roll out, and it's kind of been met with probably some miscommunication and a little bit of resistance, is that they want to categorize the sports, however they've done it, and they'll do it every other year. So I'm not sure where golf And I know there's been a couple other sports where they're like, oh, in 2019, it's a year for sport X. And then when it came down to the actual conference call, they decided to push it to the next year. So I think that'll all get settled in due time. But I think it was just kind of the new process that they've tried. I think that's just a, few growing pains.
So if it's a year where there's rule changes, et cetera,
Yep.
is that, I know with golf it was, we met with UUA at our meetings,
Yep.
at the championship,
Yep.
and brought forward that. Is
Yep.
that still happening, or is that
Yep.
where we bring them to you?
Yeah, so what'll happen is they'll do a call for motions, like you'll meet as an organizer, your coaches, then you'll talk about any motions that you want to bring forward. You could bring that forward to us, but the motions will automatically go to the OUA and it'll go to sport committee. But it's good for each department to understand what that motion was. So if sport committee has any questions, they'll come back to us and ask. So then it goes to the OUA sport committee. They'll review it, and if they think it's something that should go forward to the board, then it will. Sometimes they rubber stamp it because they think it's an obvious one. Sometimes sport committee will turn it down and it won't go forward to the board. And I know there's also been some miscommunication in the past that if a rule gets voted down, that information doesn't get back to the coaches. Because sometimes, and I'm sure it's happened to each of you, you walk out of a coaches meeting where it's unanimous on a particular motion, and it gets to sport committee and it just gets flat turned down for whatever the reason was, and then the reasons don't get filtered back down to the coaches and just causes a lot of frustration. So we're trying to alleviate a lot of that communication as well.
So that happens in May, because currently there is change in golf, and
Okay.
none of us have been told whether it's passed or not. So I just,
Okay, so we actually just got some information on the OUA meetings. We can just check to see if that's kind of on the docket.
okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, shall we move on? Student athlete eligibility. So again, we just wanted to reiterate, just make sure that you understand the eligibility for your team and your athletes. It does change from OUA sports to U Sport sports. So for example, all the U sports are G1, G2, you're in a unique situation because you kind of fall under, you're an OUA sport, but you fall under the rules and regs of like the U sports, meaning that you need to be a full-time student, and then to be eligible to play the next year, you have to pass 6 courses or 3.0 credits. So for an OUA sport like yourself, Carla, that stipulation isn't there anymore. So you just have to be a full-time student in the term where the OUA championships fall. And that's been about 5 years since they changed that. So, question? Now so your curling is unique as well because you fall under an OUA sport, but you're also a U Sport sport. So actually, I went through the rules and regs, and there's an error on their site because you actually fall. Yeah, because we actually have to make sure that all your athletes have taken the proper amount of courses. That hasn't been an issue, but they just have it laid out wrong.
Asking about the age restrictions. Because I have some athletes that are coming back for masters and PhDs.
Yeah, so curling, there's not an age restriction. Rugby, there is. Football, there is. I think those are the only 2 sports that have age restrictions. So if you have any questions at all, because certainly athletes can get into situations where you might have to ask them questions about their eligibility. Just
Nothing's changed for being eligible, right?
mm-mm.
It's just all, it has to be. Okay, so actually good question then. So we have a student athlete who didn't complete her term in fall.
Okay.
So she can still, if she wants to play next season, she needs to take 6 winter and summer. Yes.
Possibly. I would have to look at the account because sometimes they can, they might do a petition and they might get credit for courses. So what I have to take a look at the account specifically on as a one-off.
I'll touch base with you on that.
Eligibility certificates. So each of you have an eligibility certificate deadline that I work with you just to make sure that gets posted in online, timely fashion. Letter of intent for U Sport sports. It's a very simple process now. It's all online. So once the athlete goes to the U Sport Central student athlete portal, gets themselves an ID, they send it back to yourself or to me, and then we can just send them a letter of intent electronically, and all they got to do is click. So, and hopefully OUA sports are not far behind. So. Was that?
Is it the forward button?
Yeah, I think just a space bar, I think you'll do the trick. Any questions on eligibility?
Oh, look, you're done.
Yeah, if there's a,
The letter of intent saying that it's coming to OUA, is that something like, because I know it's only at the youth sport level, right?
yep, you can do it in the OUA.
But is that something that can really be, what I don't know what the word is, like,
Useful?
yeah.
Yeah,
Because
more and more.
NCAA is big, right? Like,
Yeah,
you sign,
so yes.
You fail on that, and
So-
then you get trouble.
So,
Is up here, is it just a little?
no, it's getting bigger and bigger. Marie, you do what, 3 or 4 like signings a year with your incoming recruits,
And
and
it's more like, we use them as, I don't know, it's the girls really like that, the idea of that.
Oh,
Like, it's so popular now to be
Yeah.
able to post that kind of stuff, with some good hockey athletes, I'm sure you would
Yeah.
find it somewhere with,
yeah,
Well,
so-
like golf
yeah.
right now for girls, like in the States, it's just such a
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
silliness, right?
So we've done something similar where you bring the recruit on campus and they'll sign the form. You can take a photo op with, you know, the coaches or the athletic director, and we post a big story online, and we can make a big splash.
Okay.
Yep.
But there's no like follow up in the sense of if they don't follow through with it, they're not.
well, we always just say to them, like, if, you know, if something happens and you, like, don't want to come here anymore, we're not gonna, like, force you to come.
Okay,
This
so it's
person-
more just sort of a
It's-
show.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's a
and-
verbal agreement, but it can be broken,
Sure.
And especially here, like there's obviously, you're all waiting for offers for a lot of your recruits. They can still sign the letter of intent, you know, without confirmation of an offer. And as Marie said, if they end up not getting an offer, then
Yeah.
they can just go to another institution if they get in elsewhere. Okay, we kind of alluded to this a little bit with when Laura was talking about doing all the medical forms. So the student athlete registration, so like field hockey, men's rugby, for the past few years, we've had like a day of registration for the student athletes. We're going to continue to do that again. It's going to be a little bit different because your training camps are staggered now due to the OUA capacity project. But just know, and we're still we're in talks right now on how we're going to roll this out, because we just know between all of medical needs, all of the eligibility needs, bios, headshots, handing out gear, the CCS, like there's just so much we expect everybody to do. We thought if we're gonna come up with a checklist over the course of the summer, send it out to you. You can send it to all your athletes and say this is what's going to be expected of you when you step on campus for the first time in August or September. So these are all the things that are going to be included in that. We've talked about quite a few of them. One thing about the team fees or player fees, which I think all of you do to some extent, is you've already worked with Trevor on your apparel. You're going to come up with a budget for your year, as Brian kind of outlined, and we're going to have to ballpark a budget, and then you're going to have to ballpark a player fee that's going to make sure that your budget balances at the end of the season. So we want every one of your athletes to pay their player fee, like once they're confirmed and they made the roster, to pay it, so we're not chasing down money in February, March. We had several teams that we were doing that for, and that's part of the reason why we're over, you know, $50,000, because we have all this outstanding player fees. If we get it done right up front, and then you get your monthly reports from Unit 4, we think it'll go a lot more smoothly than it has in the past, and you'll know how much money you're dealing with, or how much money that you might have to raise heading into the winter term, opposed to scrambling at the end of March and April. March.
Are we still planning, hopefully launching this year, data University of Waterloo Athletics website? It'll have all the links listed out for every form.
Yep.
Yeah, rather than getting an email from Laura about email, or
Yep.
we can do emails from
Yep.
Chris on what you have to fill out. They'll be getting a link on the University of Waterloo Athletics webpage, and all those links will all be listed there, so just one,
Yeah.
do this, do
Yeah,
this.
yeah. So we're going to come up with a one-stop shop, so to speak. So then it's very clear that everything that needs to be done. And then hopefully by the first week of September, once you guys get going, I know you're a little bit later for curling, but once your rosters are set, everything is complete.
What do some of you guys do in team fees? Like, we've never done it in golf because we just try to include it with our
Yep,
fundraising and
yep.
we ask the girls to go out and get that. What do you guys do fundraising-wise, or teams and?
We have not done a ton of fundraising in the past, so the athletes would rather just pay a fee.
Yeah.
So mostly our team fee just covers a uniform or clothing. For the most part.
Yeah, but so depending on your sport, depending on your team, you may do more fundraising than others. Some just like to have a player fee.
So organizing a fundraiser.
Right. So
Basically, it's whatever apparel is,
yeah.
plus,
Yeah, typically speaking, the player fee has been your apparel fee. But now that there's more opportunity for maybe exhibition, meal money, as Brian mentioned, is becoming more important. Like, hey, if you charge everybody $50 to $100, and you might be able to feed your players throughout the year, however you see fit, or maybe you might be able to fundraise and cover the cost of, apparel fees. So I think everybody ideally would love that, to have enough fundraised or alumni money that you don't have to charge a player fee. So, and that's what some of the tier 1 teams do. They fundraise enough to cover that.
We did one of the curling championships, like a rules, like everybody paid your $20 or whatever, and then whoever won, like won half the money, the rest of it went to us, and stuff like that. Nobody wants to put time into organizing an event, and I don't have time.
Yeah.
So,
That's all they did, but,
Right. All right, let's cognizant of time here, so let's. So just kind of further on to the registration. So we just wanted to let you know that once we get here's my varsity roster, like all this stuff has to be checked or done. So just give you an idea, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes when you submit a roster to us. So like Lauren, for example, on Right Hat side, they get coded in Quest, and every one of those athletes that get coded, they get tracked on a weekly basis for eligibility purposes. They get their towel service, assigned a peer mentor, communicated first year orientation. So that's where Laura kind of alluded to the fact about roster size, and I don't think anyone in the room, we hadn't had any issues, but 3 years ago we kind of did a number check of all the rosters that were submitted, and it was like 640 athletes. But then we actually kind of did a head count. It was more like we really only have 580 athletes. So there's, teams will just bring players like, all right, more the merrier. Like, I might have some injuries, so I'm going to bring a few extra on. But then again, you got that 45th player sitting there, probably won't have a chance to play, but all this administration will take place. So we were administering all these different things for 60, 70 athletes that probably weren't even going to be on your varsity teams. So just be cognizant of that, and like I said, it hasn't been an issue for any of your sports. Talk about advancement. All right, recruiting and admissions. So we understand that the world of recruiting is ever so important to the development of your programs. I know each of you have done quite a bit. So just know that we can help you, and I know a lot of you have taken advantage of some of our supports. So I just want to maybe go to the homepage for Waterloo. So we just want to make sure that you guys understand the landscape of Waterloo, the strength of what academic programs we provide. So if you're out there talking to recruits, you know what programs and faculties that we have. So when you have some extra time, you just go to faculties and academics. Right. Just go, so it's all laid out. So if you want to go, there's all the faculties on the left-hand side. You can click any one of those under Applied Health Sciences, and you can navigate through their particular sites and find out exactly what each of the faculties offer in terms of programs. Because sometimes a recruit will sit there and say, I'm looking to do English, and you may or may not know that we have an English program, and you can go through the Faculty of Arts, you can filter down, and you can kind of gain some more information on that particular program.
What else should we go to the satellite campuses?
Pardon me?
Would they be eligible for a varsity program? Like if they went to Stratford or to...
Yep, there'd be a U Waterloo student. So if, Right, so obviously, you know, co-op and the academic strength, we need to turn the glasses half full, because I know you've all probably lost top-notch athletes because they couldn't get in. That's just the way it is here at Waterloo. Like, we're one of the, our reputation is second to none in the country, and that's not going to change. So you know, kind of have to kind of spin it a little bit and say, yes, we do have the top program in engineering and math and science and kin, and each of our faculties have some sort of a major strength that you can sell. We got lots of recruiting materials that you can take advantage of us. Just contact us. Recruit visits is becoming more and more popular. Bringing a top athlete onto campus, kind of rolling out the red carpet, meeting with faculty, meeting with someone in the department, doing a tour of the campus, tour of residents. Kind of give them a real 360 look of what Waterloo's all about. And that's something that we can help coordinate as well. Admissions. So maybe we can go to that second link that I sent. So if you just go to the home page. So I know all of you send me information, and we have your recruit list. They're on a spreadsheet that every single admission officer can see, and all the questions that you send to me, I send down to them. I try to follow up as best I can. So if you just go to search, and just go admissions, that page should come up. We'll send you. So all this presentation, we're going to send this presentation out to you, so you have it. So just go to the top one, Lauren. So if you have any questions about what the standard is to get into a particular program, whether it be an Ontario recruit or a out of province, you can just go, if you go down to, just pick a, we'll just go view requirements for AFM. Just go right down to that. And then all the required courses that they need to take are outlined right there. And then they do say from the mid-'80s, I think you could, it's safe to say that whatever's posted on the website right now, probably add a few, because it does get updated on a, they say on an annual basis, but I just know that because of the competitiveness of some of these programs that, you know, that mid-'80s could easily become low 90s. Because that change, and it changes on an annual basis just based on the strength of applications. And so it's a good thing when you're talking and you say, hey, what are your grades like? You know, what are you taking? So you can go and say, if somebody wants kinesiology or AFM for this particular case, you can go and make sure that they're taking the proper courses. And one other thing that I would note too, and I know some teams are starting to roll this out, is they're actually kind of giving their recruits, because some of these teams are recruiting 2-3 years out, giving them advice, and I know their guidance counselor could be doing the same thing as well, as what courses to take in term 1 versus term 2 in grade 12. Because there are some courses, calculus and vectors, that unless you have that, and there's a midterm mark, they will not, even if you're a 98% student, unless so engineering, that's one of the required courses that they need to see a grade. If you don't have a mark, doesn't matter how strong of a student you are, they have to wait for that to come in. So, and you know, I know English as well, and I think you guys have done this over the years, right? You know, take a lot of your required courses in term 1, so all that grade information is available in January, and they potentially could make a decision earlier than later. Any questions on admissions at all? And if we just go back, so, you know, over the past 5 years, you know, Brian and I, we're trying to make inroads with admissions. We're trying to make inroads with the deans of all the faculties. We're selling what a student athlete means. We totally understand that an 85% student that spends 40 hours in their sport and they're on the provincial team and they're tagged at the national level, you know, you're going, why can't they take that student over a 90% student that, you know, all they've done is studied to get into Waterloo? We've told that story many, many times. The ears are open in the registrar's office. It's just taking some time to kind of, you know, filtering that down to when it actually gets to the time to make a decision. Are they going to take that into consideration? And then they do, because everyone has to fill out an AIF, an admissions information form, and that's where the opportunity for all your recruits to sell who they are outside of school. They look at them all. Engineering and math grade them, but I can tell you, even in like rec and arts, if it's a student athlete and I have to ask a question about them, they're going, first question to me is, do they have their AIF done? It's not mandatory, but we've told all of our recruits, make sure you get that AIF done. So round two of offers for this cycle is going to take place the next week. So we have a meeting with them tomorrow. We'll see what their appetite is to kind of, because I know some great information is now populated from UAC. If they can provide earlier offers, then what's going to come down the pipe a week from now. But I just know all the admissions officers, they basically lock themselves in a room for the next 3 or 4 days, and they're just going to push out round two offers. So if you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll do my best to get that to the correct individual at registrars. Questions at all? Okay. Facility bookings, you want to kind of speak on this?
Sure. I think most of you guys are familiar with procedure for facility bookings by now, but for any regular practice time requests you have, like for the full season or training camp, you can direct those to Chris and I, and we'll work together to figure out what's going to work, and then go back to Darren just to manage all the moving pieces. If it's just like a one-off request that week that you want to see if there's additional time, feel free to go directly to Darren.
Yeah, so the only thing I would add to that is we expect the field house to be programmable come this fall. We can't guarantee. We're starting with fall, so yeah, we can't. The dates change so rapidly, so I think we've been told just to say until we know a concrete date, we're not going to start. We're not going to start booking. So, but we are starting for training camps.
We have like
We've late,
contingency
yeah,
schedule in place.
yeah.
So thinking that will be open in August so that we could go with it, but we might have to push the fall.
Right. So I'll be reaching out for like getting your training camp and practice times and seeing how the field house is going to open up some flexibility potentially.
Right, okay.
I know it's travel policy. You want the mic?
I'll speak loudly. So yeah, basically in the last year and a half, we've had a couple of travel incidences that have come up, which raised a lot of questions for us and flags, realizing that maybe we don't necessarily have the best practices in place. So that's something over the last year we've been working on, putting a comprehensive document together that covers off all the different situations that we have as a department, just because we have 32 varsity teams, we have clubs, we have some teams with 5 people, some teams need 2 buses. So we've just been looking at all the different scenarios across the department and trying to come up with one document that will hopefully get to you guys in the fall as a reference point. So stay tuned for that. A couple things that have come out of the travel policy that have been changes, which we've already started to implement. We're just encouraging teams that are traveling individually, not on buses, to utilize our partnership with Enterprise as opposed to taking personal vehicles. We're also trying to move away from student athletes driving themselves to competition, but realizing that sometimes that might be the best case for them if they're on co-op in Toronto and your competition is in Toronto. So with the travel policy, we're also working on a waiver that we would distribute to you guys to have your athletes complete, just to cover all our bases and waive liabilities. New this year as well, we are now working with the International Travel Office. So there's a safety abroad coordinator, Mary Rose Stone, that we're working with for any international travel. So that includes any trips to the U.S. as well. I know some of you do exhibition there or competition there. So with that process, it's kind of a 2-step process. So the first step being you and I would work together to collect basic information. So who's traveling, what program, emergency contact information, that sort of stuff. And then the second part would be Mary Rose would come in and she can do a session with the team just to review all the information that's needed. There's like an online quiz that has to be done through Learn. There's some paperwork, and then there's it's called ISOS, which is like a membership program that student athletes would be covered under within the university, and it just is additional medical coverage in case of an emergency situation. So that's something new we've been starting this year. It's pretty painless. She does all of the chasing of information information from the student athletes directly, so that's nice for us. It's just the 2 forms that we would have to work together to complete. So, and usually, ideally, she likes about 4 weeks notice if possible to get the process started, just because it's a lot of time sometimes chasing, which I'm sure everyone knows. Yeah, that's where we're at for travel policy. Any questions on that?
What about practices? So practices are offsite.
Yeah. Yep. So that's
So that's, yeah, I would say that's why it hasn't been fully rolled out as
Right.
yet, because as we kind of went through this process, almost every team has a unique situation where you're practicing off campus, or you're playing at Laurier, or you know, in the past you used to just kind of carpool together. So we're trying to take in consideration all those things that you've done and how we're going to roll it into this and make sure that we comply to at least the high-end policy that, you know, like students driving students is almost like a no-no now, but there still are some circumstances where that might be the case. So we're still kind of vetting through a lot of those.
It's not unique to us. Other universities in Ontario face the same
Yep.
situations as well. So we've been picking their brains as well to see kind of what they're doing. For that situation in particular, where our policy is at right now, is if there's a team that's regularly practicing at the same venue throughout the year, then we would just flag that ahead of time and have like a pre-approved list of drivers. If it's always going to be the same person, but again, not in place. There's some things that have to be reviewed by legal on campus if we're going to call it policy versus best practices. So in the works still. Continue driving to practice. Yeah,
I just think
until told otherwise.
all are taking the bus and just find your way there.
Coach bus.
This one is just a travel checklist of things to be mindful of on the days that you're traveling. So throughout the year, if you're doing a bus, I'll usually send out an itinerary for travel that week on the Monday, so that works well with everyone so far. Okay, just a reminder to check the dates and times and that the bus is correct, just because we sometimes have 15, 20 trips happening a week, and then the information that we have to send to Cherry, they're organizing like hundreds of trips a week, so just being mindful of that 10-day guideline to send trip information in by. That just helps everything roll smoothly. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that side.
Okay. All right, you can talk a little bit about this, but I would just kind of open this up by saying that, and I think we've kind of pushed this out over the years about all the different leadership opportunities within the department, and I'm sure each of you as individual teams will do something in the community or do something with local organizations. Just want to give you a little bit of snapshot of all the different opportunities right now within the department. So we talked about our peer mentoring program. So we hire the last 2 or 3 years 12 to 15 upper year student athletes, paid position to be a peer mentor for all of our first years. IU Council, you guys are all aware of that particular program. So the IU executive paid as well. Team Up for 20 plus years now in the community, so continue to encourage your athletes to get involved if that's something that's of interest to them. It's great on a resume. And there's a lot of other volunteer opportunities, whether it be President's Golf that's coming up, Think Pink. There's lots of stuff, and I know in the past Jenny's probably just inundated you guys, we need volunteers for this and do this, or her co-op students emailing you, or perhaps someone else in the department. So we kind of tried this last year, we'll probably do it again, is Jenny's just going to come up with a Google Doc of all the different events and programs that we'll need volunteers for over the course of the season, and then you as coaches, or you can forward this to your captains, your teams can sign up accordingly. Okay. The captain slide. So a number of coaches have come to us and said, you know, what's expected of the captains from my team other than what you require of your captains of your particular sport. So IU Council is certainly one. But again, if you want to, you know, give your captains another role, just let us know and we can certainly work with them You know, whether it be working with apparel or travel or any other type of administration, fundraising, just let us know.
I can do this one. So housing. So any of your first year incoming student athletes who are looking for housing, they still would have to apply through the regular process. So the link is online here. But you can also send me a list of who you have coming in with Waterloo Housing, which is MKB, V1, there's 3 other ones. We're guaranteed a certain number of single rooms within those residences. So we use it as a first come, first serve, but we haven't exhausted the number that they provide to us. So you can send those names to me. For Waterloo Housing, we have some guaranteed, and then for the university colleges, we don't have a official agreement per se, but we do have relationships with them where we can send the names and they can see what they can do to try and get the athletes in. Same for if there's any training camps that you have starting early before the move-in date, which I don't know would be the case now with the capacity project.
Right.
But if that was the case, you can work with me to get some early requests in, and they can usually accommodate those. Yeah. Questions on that?
All right, again, just kind of all the different supports that we have from an academic perspective. So again, we tell the coaches, we tell all the student athletes, get to know your advisors, get to know your professors, introduce yourself, tell them you're a student athlete, tell them what your schedule is going to be over the course of the term. Just kind of flag anything in advance, opposed to if a midterm is going to be a conflict with a potential competition or a playoff date. Know that earlier than later. They don't like when they get surprised within a few days. And if you need any help with any of the conflicts, then just let us know and we can try to troubleshoot as well. We're still working with the Student Success Office with our peer mentorship program is kind of turning into a student success coaching program. I don't know if you want to kind of talk about the difference there.
Now is more focusing on building the warrior community, kind of like a big brother, big sister program, so that incoming first year student athlete has a go-to person if they have any questions about managing practice, managing times, where do I go for this, for nutrition, that sort of thing. And then the academic side now is more on the plate of our peer success coaches, which I believe we had a women's golf player do that this year as well. So we're going to be continuing that next fall. And they do one-on-one appointments to focus on, just depending on what the issue is, it might be time management, study skills, test anxiety, that sort of thing. So they're available for that as well.
Tutors, as Brian mentioned, yes, we have tutors for everybody, for all of our student athletes. You know, I think once upon a time, probably 4 or 5 years ago, when we kind of rolled out the tutoring program, we kind of started with a small sample size of teams or athletes because we weren't sure how well it was going to go and how many student athletes would be required to have tutors. But it's very successful. So we can now roll it out to all the departments, so you can safely tell your student athletes that if you do need support in any particular course, we can help out. Just be mindful, like we are going to that student coach success model because a lot of the times an athlete or a student athlete, they don't necessarily need help in a particular course, they just need help how to study, how to time manage. Well, it might be nutrition, it might be sleep, so just kind of vetting through all those type of issues. So it might not be how to study for Chem 120, but if that is the case, you definitely have support. So just you can take advantage of both of those. Grade tracking, so we did this last year. So at the end of the term, grades I believe should be fully into Quest. I think next week is the deadline. So we'll get our winter term report for all of our student athletes in the next week or two. We will send that to you. We will flag any student athlete that might have some academic issues based on how they did, or from an eligibility perspective, we'll try to flag that now. So if they do have to take some courses in the summer to be eligible for the fall, we'll know. We don't want to find that out come August because there's always one or two that falls through the cracks. So hopefully that's not going to be the case this year. So we just ask you if you could just take a look at those reports. And if you have any questions for us, or if you think somebody does need some support, not just academic, and Marsh, you can talk about, you know, wellness in a few slides. Again, just come to us and we can help or point you in the right direction. All right, Marshall's new role.
Yeah, so I'm a wonderful coach. I've actually been appointed as the wellness coordinator for the athletic department, which means I'm here to work with all of our teams and support you in however you need. Now, in some situations, it could be academic support. I mean, we just got all this meeting stuff today. Some of us probably don't remember, it was on the third slide. I know I don't, right? You know, I was like, which of the 5 courses do I have to take? Well, we don't remember that because it's just so much information that gets down. So what I'm here for the student athletes and for yourselves as well, if you're not sure how to access something, if you're not sure to go the proper way to solve a problem or situation, okay? I can be the one-stop shop for that. Drop in, see me. If I don't know the answer, I'll get the answer. I'm gonna try and get out to pretty much all of your practices or games at least once, okay? Just so I can drop in, put a name to the face, okay? I look scary, but I'm not that scary. I'm kind of a nice guy most times, okay? If you think that you have a student athlete that might be having issues, having problems, and they approach you and you don't know how to access the resources, they don't know how to access the resources, even though they're told 100 times how to access resources, when it comes to them, they don't know how. Okay, they're nervous, they're worried. Okay, you can contact me and I can work through you. The student athlete can come in and see me, I can work with them directly. I've worked through therapists. You know, they're a good friend of the therapist, share the problem with the therapist, work back to the therapist. I never met the student, but we got them the help that they needed to get. And that's what I'm here about. I'm just here about getting the best help possible for our student athletes so that they can be successful. So that's what I'm here for. And I tell them all the time, you know, my cell phone number is on the website. I hand out business cards to everybody. My cell phone's on that business card. If you're in a situation at 2:30 in the morning that you don't think you should be at, or there's a problem, call my cell phone. Don't text because I won't hear it, right? I won't wake up to the text, but call my cell phone. I'll come in and we'll get that problem worked on. Okay? Don't let it fester. Let's get it solved right away. Okay? I'll also be offering some workshops and stuff later on through another lady in the department about responding to disclosure. I'm also trying to work on again, we don't have time for all these long meetings and seminars all the time. It's just be too much after a while. So I'm working with health services on campus to try and get a quick 20-minute presentation on looking for keys and clues that somebody might be in distress. Just so I can give you the Coles notes of it. So you have a little piece there to work with, so you see that happening, then you can respond to that. Because none of us are experts, but my job is to help transition that person from lay people like ourselves and get them the actual professional help that they need to solve their problems. Good enough? All right.
All right, we just wanted to throw all the different the staff on here. We're going to populate their roles and then we'll send it out to you so you know exactly. I think everyone in here knows pretty much everybody on this list, but just so you know and have it on paper as to who does what. And I know a lot of you already have relationships with these people. You can go ahead and contact them. Sometimes you don't have to come through Lauren, Brian, or myself or Marsh. You can go directly to them. You've already, KCB and Siri is another good example. If you establish a connection, you go straight to them and work in any campaign that you have going. And that is it. So the last thing I would say, and Marsh kind of alluded to it, is that now that we have a 4-person team, and you can even say even more than that, and we've said this for the last year and a half, that we want to get out face to face with yourselves and your student athletes and communicate a lot of this information firsthand, opposed to just email. I think just kind of showing that who we are, what we do, getting out to your practices, getting out of your games is going to be invaluable for us in terms of communicating with your teams. So that's something that we want to do this fall again. It might not be all of us at one particular time, might be one of us, might be two of us or three, but we want to get out, whether it's at Westmount, whether it's at your course, get out there and just say hi and let them know all the different supports that they have at their disposal. Any questions? Awesome. That's a wrap.
We're talking here,